Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dose. Thank you for being here. I am Michelle Harrell, your host. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming Ann Hamilton. Ann has a very interesting background. I love all the varied experience that you have. So she has been a former litigator. She is a member of the Psychedelic Bar Association. She has worked in several industries: government, nonprofit, higher education, still working as a professor, at USC in the School of Cinematic Arts. She is a certified mediator. She has her JD from Yale Law School, her master's in philosophy from Stanford, and she's a graduate of Notre Dame and the American Film Institute. Wow, I'm tired just listing all that. And today she is the founder and executive director of the Survivorship Collective, which is a nonprofit hoping to serve those with cancer through connecting them through psilocybin retreats here in Oregon. Did I do that justice, Anne?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a psychedelic assisted therapy that's legal and safe is really it's the big picture. But yes, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm really excited to have you. Anne and I met through another local nonprofit that I'm part of, which is called Breast Friends here in Portland, the Portland metro area, which is a nonprofit serving anyone with going through a diagnosis of breast cancer. And Anne was a guest speaker at one of our events and did a free webinar on the different, benefits of using psilocybin during this type of, when you're in the throes of cancer treatment or even as a survivor, right? And it came from your own personal experience. So I'm going to pause there and hand the mic over to Anne to kind of share her story of how she came to find psilocybin and how it was helpful for you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me and for bringing me onto your show. It's such a wonderful conversation to be having and a really important one.
It is. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. So I guess I don't even know where to start in terms of I guess I could start when I got cancer, but I was a person before I got cancer. I was doing other things.
Yeah.
Which is it's important to remember. I was a lawyer, and then when I was clerking for the federal government, I got into film school because I was really interested. I'm still very interested in the law and policy, but I began to realize that storytelling is actually a much more effective way of changing people's minds and changing policy and changing public perception. So I went to film school at AFI, and then I became a filmmaker. And then right after my first movie came out, I was diagnosed with stage 3C breast cancer, which was a big surprise because there wasn't any history in my family. It turns out my dad was adopted, so it turns out there actually was. We just didn't know about it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm BRCA positive as well, which adds to the mix of things that complicate my life. But so you get diagnosed in your 30s, and it's a big shock, and you go through treatment, which is about a year to a year and a half. When you're kind of in the hospital a lot. It's kind of like a part-time, full-time job because chemotherapy is a big deal and mastectomy is a huge deal. Radiation's no joke. And then I was put on an aromatase inhibitor, which is like this chemotherapy that blocks hormones and other things from working. And I'm actually still on it. I get to go off of it in August, which was a huge thing.
Yeah.
So I'm technically still in treatment now, which is, it's weird to think about, but I actually am.
And those are just the physical impacts that you listed. Not even thinking about the emotional and, all the other stuff that comes along with that kind of,
Exactly. And I think it's just good to set the table of why the emotional stuff happened. And, it makes sense, right? You're supposed to have if you're not feeling anxiety and depression after that, there's something really amazing about you or wrong with you. I don't either one, maybe both. But I was really, I was okay during treatment because it's very regimented, and you have people kind of in your life every day who are helping you. And there's a very clear goal, which is to go into remission. But then what's surprising and what's actually very common, but not talked about enough, is that after all of the treatment ends and you're kind of put out into the world, you get to be a survivor in the wild again, that's actually when a lot of the major problems start to happen, because we don't
Mm,
have real support that addresses those existential issues of recurrent fears, of body disassociation and body trauma.
mm,
There's a lot of just like grief around the
mm,
possibility of dying young. There's just a
mhm.
lot of that stuff. And the things that you lose when you get cancer quite young are pretty substantial, not just physically, emotionally, but also financially. Like, I will
Yeah.
never earn what I was going to earn before. That's just not a possibility anymore. And children
Wow,
are
I
those.
hadn't even considered that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a really
it's
good point. I hadn't even thought of
yeah,
that. So,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a lot. And there's actually, studies have been done on young survivors. So young survivors meaning people who are diagnosed below the age of 45, even though they might be
Hmm.
past 45 now. But so they're called adolescent and young adult cancer survivors. It's AYA. But we're 57% more likely to develop depression, 29% more likely to develop anxiety, and 56% more likely to develop psychotic disorders in the years following
Wow.
treatment than our healthy
Wow.
siblings, which is like, those are really big numbers, right?
Yeah,
And then,
those are huge.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then compounded, I don't know if you're aware of the recent studies coming from the American Cancer Institute, but
Hmm.
young women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with cancer young than young men, which is it's a new development in our society. And they're going to try to figure out why. But there's a lot of young
Hmm.
women dealing with this, and it's not just breast cancer; it's a lot of different kinds of cancer. So,
Wow.
um, but yeah, so I was, I guess, I don't know. So I was having a lot of problems
Hmm.
psychologically,
Hmm.
and I was in good hands. Like, I had a good psychiatrist, I had a good psychologist. I was on, an antidepressant,
Hmm.
Wellbutrin. It was working. Like, I was able to get out of bed, but like deep down,
Right.
if I really thought about the future, it terrified me.
Hmm.
And there wasn't any way around that. So I would just avoid it. I would avoid
Hmm.
talking about it. I would avoid thinking about it. I would avoid investing in anything that would require planning, because it made me super anxious and I couldn't sleep.
Mm.
Which means relationships, it means career, it means saving money.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in saving money and having a retirement fund if I'm going to die in 3 years? Like, it was just a lot of
Yeah.
stuff like that. So,
It's like almost a hopelessness in a way, or cynicism, or it's just, I mean, it's fear based, but yeah,
yeah,
wow.
I think it's actually just it's trauma based, right?
Yeah.
It's not cynicism. I think it's actually just how your body responds to trauma, because you've had, like, if we're running around, on the plains of Africa, and a lion comes out, you're going to be looking out for lions after that. Like, that's just how
Right.
our animal brains are wired.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so it's really hard not to be vigilant, even if the chance of recurrence is relatively low. Like, you're still going to be hyper vigilant, and you're going to
Mm,
plan for that lion. You're just going to
mm,
plan for that lion, because that's how your body is wired. So, and it's a kind of trauma. Like, it's not quite PTSD because it's future based, right?
mhm,
And PTSD is about the past, and
mhm,
but recurrence is a real thing, and it happens to a lot of people. And I've had friends die that I was in treatment with.
mm.
It's part of what
Yeah.
it is to be a survivor. So, yeah. So I got about 2 years after my treatment was over. I was in a really dark place, and nothing was working. And so I was put in touch with somebody who uh, was a guide for psilocybin. And
Mhm,
it was underground. I don't recommend that. I think it's actually not a good idea for a lot of reasons to go
mhm,
underground, especially if there's safe and legal opportunities available, which there
mhm,
are now in Oregon. Uh, but because of the timing and where I was, it was what was
mm.
available to me,
Yeah.
and it was very helpful. It was one dose. It was one afternoon, and I was able to, really process my fears
Mhm,
of dying young, and
mhm,
come through on the other side in a way that was very peaceful and tranquil about that. And that allowed me to kind of re-engage in the world, like resubscribe
yeah,
into life is how I think about it.
yeah.
But I didn't tell anybody, because, like, I'm a lawyer, right? Like,
Right,
like, why would you? This is not something I never even like tried pot. Like, I'm not the kind of person
right.
who does this kind of thing.
The
And
kind of
I didn't know.
person, yeah, yeah.
Right,
No,
right.
but
Like, that's how I saw myself.
yeah, but I think that's a lot of people's story, no matter the reason they came to this plant in the first place, whatever their intentions were. think a lot of people are surprised afterwards and feel the same way. It's like, I'm not the kind of person that does that. This was my first
Right.
time, and feel the need to kind of, give context to it for folks. And that's, I think, why one of the big reasons I wanted to do this podcast is because I really
Yeah.
am hoping to have on different individuals from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all different reasons for seeking something like this out, but really to show, the world that there isn't like one type of person who this is helpful for, or that does this, that it's actually can be really useful for a lot of different use cases. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. And I think it's just how a reasonable person looking at this from the outside who isn't familiar with it would think about it. Like
Hmm.
that's how I thought
Yeah.
about it. And
Yeah.
I as you listen, like I have a lot of reasons to have a lot of, um education about this, but at the same time I
Hmm.
had a bias. And so it was my personal experience that was very helpful, but also I was a little ashamed to tell people about it because I
Hmm.
was afraid of how I'd be perceived.
Right.
Um and so like fast forward a couple of years later, I was on a retreat, and I met this young woman who was stage 4, and it was like a beautiful retreat kind of in nature. And I didn't know, like, it was like a hiking retreat, like I didn't
Oh,
know
okay.
that about
Yeah.
her, and I didn't, like, we just kind of, we random people, some people from Europe, some people who were like, going through all these other things, but she was in her 30s too.
Wow.
And we had this conversation where we both realized we both had breast cancer, and hers had come back, and I was
Mm.
kind of approaching the 5-year mark. So it was a very meaningful week for me, meeting this
Mhm.
person, and um, still is. And so we really bonded, and we happened to share like, have you ever tried like psilocybin? And she was like, yes, like it makes my life possible. And I was like, are you kidding? Like, okay, that's good to know. And then I began to wonder, like, maybe there's a lot of people who are either curious about it or have tried it, but
Mhm.
it's not safe to do underground because you don't have redress if there's any legal issues that come up, which is it's a great reason to really pursue it in a legal way. And
Mhm.
so I started asking around, and I was like, so hey guys, like, is anybody interested in this? Has anybody tried it? And like the vast majority of my younger female friends who'd had breast cancer or any kind of cancer were like, oh my gosh, either they were interested in it or they had tried it and it had been helpful. But there wasn't structure, and there wasn't
Right.
accountability, there wasn't trust,
Right.
and there wasn't a safe way of doing it. And I do think that as a woman, I don't want to
Mhm.
go travel to another country and hope that
Mhm.
I get there safely.
Mhm.
I don't want to put myself into a vulnerable situation because it's just not as safe to travel as a woman as it is for a man in a foreign country. So I was like, okay, so that's maybe not the best option. What else is
Mhm.
available? We're not going to go to Mexico
Yeah.
or Costa Rica. We're going to go to Oregon because I think the laws had just changed at that point where there's actually an
Mhm.
option to go.
Mhm.
Um, so and so we founded a nonprofit. So I have a friend with metastatic breast cancer, breast to bone cancer, and she's been stable for a number of years. And then another person who has a history with plant-based medicine. She's from Mexico on our board, and then we're bringing on 2 more board members who are medical professionals who work with cancer patients and survivors. And we started this group, the first group actually, to connect the first community-led nonprofit to connect the cancer community with safe and legal psychedelic assisted therapy. And specifically, we're starting with psilocybin because of its history with
Mhm.
cancer patients and survivors. I'm
Mhm.
referring to the Johns Hopkins studies.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're aware
Yeah.
of.
Yeah, that was
So,
my big why. That was
mhm.
my big why, and when I knew I wanted to do this for work is when I stumbled across their research with terminally ill cancer patients, and there's
Yeah.
a whole personal story there, but yeah, that was my big why and what really tug at my heartstrings and made me want to do this and help other people. So yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was I don't
Yeah.
know if all of your listeners are, but it was a double-blind study, and they found that with 1 dose of psilocybin, patients with life-threatening cancer, terminal or not,
Right.
experience sustained decreases in anxiety and depression, which is amazing. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important to identify that sometimes like existential anxiety and depression are different from other kinds of anxiety
Mm.
because it's based in something that's much more, I would say, spiritual and
Mhm.
mystical than than other kinds of depression. Not to say that it's better or worse. It's just sometimes
It's just different.
the other tools don't work because it's a different kind of thing. We need to think about it in a different kind of way. So it's not like this is the only tool, right? There's qigong and there's like meditation, and if you have a spiritual practice or if you belong to religion, fantastic. But we really do need to broaden the toolbox because those things don't work for everybody, and there is a really big need for help in this community. So
100%. And I would even add to that, even if you have other tools available to you that are working or that have worked in other parts of your life, I feel like when you're dealing with existential fear like that, there is this spiritual side of this experience of psilocybin, which I think gets downplayed in a lot of media coverage that I see because it is this intangible and we can't prove it. And we humans like science and we want facts, right? Which is great. But I do think that is a big part of why it is so transformational for many people. Maybe not everyone, but did you find that as well as part of your experience, that there was this real kind of spiritual side that brought you peace or comfort?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's so many things I could say about this, but I think there's a sort of false dichotomy in the way people who are in the psychedelic world talk about healing. So I'm going to talk to people who are in the know about psychedelics, but people they like to sort of split these things up, right? And even I think in the Roland Griffiths paper, he split these things up. There are these mystical experiences, which are really cool and interesting. And then there are these healing experiences, which are really helpful. But I think they're actually the same thing. I think sometimes you need mystical healing because of the nature of the problem. And I think you can get it in other ways or complementary ways, but I think we do need to focus on that kind of healing. Like, for example, I was just talking to a friend about this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I was at my doctor's appointment last week, right, my oncologist, and he was like, you know what? In April, you're not going to have to be on on this chemotherapy anymore. Like, or in August, I get to go off in August, which is a huge party. Finally, don't do it. And I was like, oh, does that mean like I could like carry a baby, or like should I, like, what is that? Like, I was like, does that, like, could I have this? Like, what does that mean? And he was like, well, like, I wouldn't put hormones into your body unless you wanted to do it for that reason. And I was like, well, why not? And he was like, well, because estrogen's really bad for you. It's what caused your cancer. It's like it's what your cancer fed on. So if there's any cells left, then blah blah blah. And I was like, well, okay, so how should I think about this? And he's like, well, the cold truth of it is that if you've got those cancer cells in your body still, they're going to come back no matter what. But if you put hormones into your body to have a baby, you're just going to die sooner. You're going to maybe lose 5 years of your life. And I was like, okay, like,
wow.
Yeah. How do you process that? You can't process that through normal therapy. It's an existential problem. It's an existential choice, right? It's a choice about being and meaning and what's the meaning of a child? What's the meaning of motherhood? What's the meaning of dying young? What's the meaning of 5 years, which is the big one? Like, I don't know, but I think a mystical experience our spiritual experience is really necessary to address things that are that deep into what it means to be human and what it means to live a life that is finite. So it's just an example. And like, that's the world I live in. Right. But I just think, just to give an example to listeners who aren't in the community, what that's like. Right.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the vulnerability with that. So thank you. And that, I felt that. I felt that when you said that as a woman and as a mom and being faced with that choice, I can empathize with how difficult that is. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's of course. Yeah, it's just I think specifics are helpful for people when thinking about this stuff.
Yeah. So, okay, so now you've established this nonprofit. How are you going about it here in Oregon, and how are you partnering with different facilities and facilitators? And maybe just walk us through a little bit of the process so people can learn if they're interested, what the process is.
Of course. So we're doing our pilot retreat. It's actually a pilot project. So there's 3 different elements to the pilot. There's the retreat itself and what surrounds the retreat. So we are we're providing what's kind of called a wraparound service. So we help with everything except for the actual day of the ceremony with psilocybin, because that is done by people who are licensed in that department. And we obviously vet them, and we work with them about on the specific needs of the cancer community. But we don't do that itself because we can't legally, and we shouldn't. But we do everything else, right?
Yeah.
So we're obviously collecting applications right now. Applications are open. We provide coaching leading up to the experience, and also community-based preparation as well, because this is a communal experience. But I know that you, Michelle, if people don't want to have a communal experience, you have a way of approaching that is very valuable. This is a communal experience, and then then there's the retreat, which is from Thursday to Sunday. And there's one day or one afternoon of a psilocybin-assisted therapy ceremony. And we partner with the Cora Center, Claudia Cuentas, and another one of her facilitators. And we're going to be working out of a service center, a licensed service center that's just outside of Portland. And it's on a beautiful piece of land that's 30 acres, and there's hiking and nature, which is really important to me, because I think nature is very healing, and psilocybin connects you to nature in ways that I've never felt in other ways. So it's really wonderful to be in nature when you're experiencing, not in a city. That's my personal experience with it. And then afterwards, we provide community-based integration and also individual coaching integration. And then people can continue on past the 3 months afterwards if they'd like to. So that's the structure of the retreat itself. And then surrounding that, we also have some research that we're doing, partnering with a medical professional at OHSU to collect qualitative data, just to kind of track and see how helpful this has been, because it's really important to get numbers. And then also there's a storytelling element, because I'm a storyteller, that we're going to be doing with individuals who are interested in it. We can sort of track their experience over the course of 6 months. And then also we'll be interviewing different people in Oregon and outside of Oregon about psilocybin and the sort of, cultural and legal frameworks around it.
Right.
So those are the 3 elements. And hopefully, we'll be able to do a lot more of this. There's been a lot of interest. So it seems like there's a demand for this kind of service. And we're also making sure that it's affordable, because that's something that's very important to us, to make sure that everybody can afford to do this and there's scholarships available. And being in a group setting helps with that as well. So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And do you want to speak to the group setting community aspect as part of the healing? Because I think that's really, what's really important to kind of point out for our listeners is that you guys are really designing this specifically for folks with cancer, right? Or that have survived cancer. And so there's going to be activities and things outside as part of the container, right, or the wrapper around the psilocybin, that are very specific to this client, right, or to this group. Do you want to maybe touch on that? Because I think that that's really important that people understand, and I think that's what's so great about what you're doing too.
Yeah. I think there's 2 elements. There's a safety element, and then there's also the community element, people who've experienced something similar to you. And every community has its own structure, but there's a certain culture and I think ceremony within this group that's really important to honor. And so we have programming around the ceremony itself that involves somatic healing, which is very important after a cancer diagnosis, because so many things happen to your body. There's also narrative healing. So being able to own your story, that's a major element that we incorporate. And then there's nature, which is very, very key to healing and to sort of finding that tranquility. So we have those 3 elements that are geared towards people who are dealing with either recurrence anxiety, or fears about resubscribing back into life, and then general grief around cancer and death and dying. So we kind of focus on those kind of existential issues, but with those 3 tools in mind, right? So nature, somatic, and narrative. And then, but the communal aspect is really important too. And this is why we're working with the Cora Center, because it's based in Indigenous wisdom and tradition. So traditionally in ancient cultures and cultures that are continuing today, this is not done alone. Usually it's done in a group. And so we're honoring that. But also, I personally think that, group healing is part of what this is. It's not
Hmm.
necessarily only about that experience that's, intense. It's about continuing the conversation with other people who experienced it with you. And
Yeah.
that's really important. I really do think that the community is just as important to what we're doing as the substance and ceremony itself. So
Yeah, no,
really
I
honoring that.
agree. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, and thanks for pointing that out around the indigenous history and culture using these plants because, I think sometimes in the West we talk about this like it's new and it's kind of new and hip and trending right now and the culture's starting to shift, but honestly, this stuff goes back thousands and thousands of years and we're just catching up here in the West.
Yeah, we've got
So,
a lot to learn, and I think
yeah,
it's good to go in humbly. One
yeah.
final piece too to our
Yep.
the people who are guiding us. I mean, there's obviously we have medical professionals on our board and people
Mhm,
who work in psycho-oncology, right? So people who specialize in psychology around cancer. But we also
mhm,
have the benefit of the experience of veterans who've been doing this for many years.
mhm,
They've been not facilitating. They've been creating wraparound experiences for retreats for veterans. And so
mhm.
we get to sort of benefit from their wisdom as well. And they're so well organized and well funded because
Yeah.
veterans they're in this sort of special group. But
Mhm.
there's three organizations that are kind of focusing on this for veterans, and we're the first one for cancer. So we're really excited to
Yeah.
get to benefit from their experience and like catch up to where they're at, so that we can serve our population because there's 20 million cancer survivors in the U.S. And I think that's important to
Yeah.
keep in mind.
And
Yeah.
when that was my thought too. When I learned about your organization initially, I was like, how come no one else has done this yet? Like this is such, this is so needed. And it was such a gap out there that, I think it's fantastic that and I love that through one of the darkest times and most difficult times of your life probably until now it came from that you birthed this beautiful new foundation and community and I think that's often what our struggles do for us, right? I'm a big proponent of like our struggles and our challenges are often there not only to teach us but to actually point us towards our purpose in a way. So I love that that's part of your story too, so thank you, Anne.
You're welcome. Yeah,
um
after acceptance and grief comes meaning making. So that's like
yeah,
I'm very lucky that I got to do that with this, and I'm not doing
yeah,
it alone. Also kind of
yeah,
great.
yeah. So how are you structuring on the scholarship side and let's talk a little bit about the financial side of it. Because that's also foreign
Oh,
to me. I could learn something
oh,
there too. So how are
well,
you hoping to find donations and things like that? Or how can our listeners help if this speaks to them and they want to get involved or they want to donate or volunteer or I don't know what kind of things you might need.
yeah, great question. So, well, right now we're raising money around scholarships and future retreats. We're still filling the gap on the pilot
Hmm.
research element. So, if people want to donate, they can actually just go to our website. It's www.survivorshipcollective.com, and you can donate there. If you are somebody who it has a connection to a foundation or wants to make a bigger donation, like to talk to me, welcome to reach out. There's a contact page. But really, the pilot is a proof of concept, and what we'd like to do is use that as a way of like showing the world here's what we're doing and why.
Hmm.
But also, aside from I mean, also we're going to have scholarships in people's names who are one in particular who have been helpful, but have passed. So people who
Hmm.
we love and we want to honor, and their family will be sort of overseeing who wins those scholarships. But
Yeah.
but more importantly, I think just because of the structure of it being an 8-person retreat, and it's a little bit less expensive than it would be otherwise, we're trying to structure it in a way where we do have at least partial scholarships for people
Hmm.
who want them, and also as we sort of broaden our reach in terms of the different centers we're working with too. I think there'll be more opportunities for that because it seems like we're probably going to do quite a bit more than just one or two. We're probably going to be
Hmm.
hopefully doing this about once a month, and with that comes opportunities for somebody who can go and pay the full price, and that person can help somebody else who can't. So I
Right.
think it's going to be hopefully a sustainable model
Yeah.
by next year. is our plan.
That's amazing. If you guys got to that once a month, that would be amazing by next year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's based on the demand we're seeing. I think it's probably more likely than not, or at least by the end of next year. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Congratulations. It's exciting. I just think about all the people that could be helped. And one thing I wanted to point out, which because I made the mistake of that as well in preparation for the podcast, and pointed out to me offline. So you don't only support women, right? I just wanted to point that out. So this is open to, maybe I'll let you talk to that. So
Oh yeah,
who's the typical? Yeah.
Well, there's no typical cancer survivor, but this is for the entire cancer survivorship community, and that also goes beyond just people who've been diagnosed. Like, we would really like to host a retreat where it's partnerships or significant others, whether they're friends or your romantic partner.
Yeah.
But it's the community. We want to heal the community because it's a communal experience. Cancer it affects everybody that you know, and healing should be a part of that too. Our first retreat is it's open to everybody right now. I think, there are a lot of factors that'll go into who gets selected for it. But I really think we're going to have many of them, and we'll probably structure them based on, different things that people are looking for. So it's going to be a very well curated and well thought out process. And anybody who's interested should apply, and we will find a spot for you as soon as possible. Future retreats. Yeah.
No, I love that. I didn't even realize that you guys were opening it up to like loved ones and partners and maybe even children, right? Assuming they're of age, but
nobody under 18, but
yeah. No, but that's one thing that I actually, during my training to become a facilitator, we had to do we all had to kind of put together a small mini research project, and kind of. Mine was all about, bringing in family members of those who might be passing. My project was about people that were terminal and how to help that community. And I hadn't seen a lot of that in the research where they're bringing in spouses or bringing in family members or loved ones, because that is for me what I found, when my father passed away of prostate cancer in 2014. There was just a lot. My mom was a caretaker for many, many years, and I was overseas, and I'm an only child. And so there was just a lot of, guilt and things that also, and grief that family members are left behind with. And I think that, psilocybin can be a really great tool in helping those that are grieving as well to go, move through their feelings and process. And, there's always a lot of feelings around somebody passing, whether they're good or bad, or usually there's a lot of mixed emotions, right? So I love that you guys are doing that. I didn't know that until just now. So that's fantastic to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually one study through Sunstone Therapies with couples, and I think it's with MDMA, but it's about that specific thing. So it has been studied and has been very helpful. And just to follow that up too, everything we do is based in scientific research. We're not doing anything that's new that hasn't been through a phase 1 clinical trial. This is very much based in real science, and I think that's also just good to keep in mind. Why it's so important for this to be above ground and to be, studied and very transparent. And I highly encourage people to, if they're considering this, find a way of doing it in a place where they can do it above ground and where it's legal, because redress is important. You're in a vulnerable state. You want to make sure there's accountability for everyone involved, right? And you can speak more to this, but the amount of training you have to go through in the licensing process, it means that you are somebody who's accountable, and there's we need accountability when we're helping people in vulnerable states, right? And that's a huge part of what we do. That's probably the biggest part of what we do is making sure there's accountability and high standards. So
thank you for saying that too. Because the foundation for me, the biggest success factor that I see with my clients and being able to really find healing and transformation is the ability to surrender and to lean into the not having control and leaning to, not knowing what will happen. And in order to do that, you have to have safety and trust, and so I can't speak to any underground retreats that are overseas because I've never been to one. I know there are plenty of reputable underground retreat facilities out there, there's also a lot of bad actors out there. And so I think,
Mhm.
but I fully can appreciate and share your concern as a woman. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable either unless I really did my research and knew, going to, somewhere overseas where I don't know where they're sourcing their mushrooms. I don't know necessarily, if something were to go wrong, to your point, who do I call afterwards? Right. So you don't want to have that kind of stuff lingering in the back of your head as you go into this experience, because mindset is so important. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And even
So
if you're
thank
not
you.
thinking about it, oh, of course, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it for you. Like that's me,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
being I just think you should, and that's why it's an important organization, and
Hmm.
why we have 2 lawyers on our board. Like it's really important to make sure that other people are looking out for you so that you can relax, right? And
Yeah.
I've said no to a lot of different places and collaborators because
Hmm.
it's not safe enough or it's not up to the right standards, and
Hmm.
you just want to have somebody else doing that for you so that you can be vulnerable and heal, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of my job, and that's why I just really love that you're in Oregon, and this is happening there, right?
Yeah, me too. It's exciting.
Yeah.
And I love that you guys are tracking, doing some research and tracking the results as well as doing the storytelling. I think those two things together are so powerful in helping to move this industry forward and to really start to, hopefully expand it into other states and across the country, right? That's the goal.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah.
federally speaking, for people in palliative care too, I think there's a we really believe, and that's something that I care about so deeply, is making sure people in end of life and palliative care have access to this everywhere because it's so important, and the
Mm-hmm.
science definitely backs it up. If you're, terminally ill and you're
Hmm.
in distress, it's really important to have this because it helps. It really does.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I can say a lot more
Yeah.
about that too, but it's
Yeah.
important.
But this is why it takes a village. I love like your background as a lawyer, and yeah, and then the cinematic arts. Like I just love hearing, how different people from different backgrounds, we're all doing our part and it's all necessary. And I just, yeah, great job and great work, and love that you guys are out here.
Oh,
So,
thank you so much.
and
Yeah.
yeah, so Anne, what is, I shared a little bit about your vision for the future for this organization, but is there anything else you wanted to share with our listeners and your hopes and dreams for how you'd like to grow this organization and reach more people?
Yeah, well, I really think right now it's about word of mouth. Like we've had a lot of interest just from that, and we're growing at the right pace, but cautiously and humbly. So, but yeah, I'd like to have retreats at least once a month in Oregon
Hmm.
and maybe other places as that becomes more accessible.
Hmm.
I also think seeing change at the federal level is really important. So if anybody's
Hmm.
interested in that, any lawyers out there, that's our main focus because it's really like we believe this should be available, like, and we really focus on our population as being a very special population because of that
Hmm.
palliative care aspect. And
Yeah.
it's a sacred thing. Dying is a sacred thing, just like life is a sacred thing. And we really want to make sure people are in a place of tranquility as they're going through that. So if anybody's interested in helping with that, we actually are helping raise funds and need some help raising funds for some federal efforts. So please reach out. That's super important. And it's the thing that will make the difference in
Yeah.
everybody's life. So it's not just about people in Oregon and California and people who can fly to Oregon. It's about everybody. So
Right.
that's really important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. Awesome. Well, so
Well,
thank oh, something just went weird with my mic. Sorry.
I
um,
think you have some sound. I'm not sure.
yeah, did you hear that too?
Can you hear me?
I
Oh,
can hear you.
oh, here we go. It's back now. Something
Okay.
happened. Okay.
Okay, yeah, there's something weird happened. Um, I can either leave that in or edit it out. We'll figure it out later. um,
I think we're
but
just wrapping it up, so we can
yeah,
go back to like take it back a couple stanzas. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again, Anne, for your time today and for your work. I am really excited about what you guys are doing, and I can't wait to see you guys grow. And really excited at the thought of you guys being able to organize one retreat a month for this community. So If you, our listeners, are out there and you want to follow Anne or get in touch with the Survivorship Collective, I think she mentioned earlier, but the website is survivorshipcollective.com. And on Instagram, you can find them at Survivorship Collective. Are there any other, and I will be sure to include all that in the notes as well for this episode. So any other last words from you, Anne, or anything you want to say?
No, thank you so much for having me here. It was a real pleasure. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay. So, well, thanks everybody. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Beyond the Dose. And we hope to see you again next week.